Well, I have to say that Frank Sinatra, Uncle Frank.
Yeah.
He's the one, he sat down with me. He was concerned. I remember we were going to sing a song on the Dean Martin show, and I'm standing in the wings with him. And I looked up, I said, so, Uncle Frank, how do you do it? How do you get that great tone? How do you sing? And he got very technical. He says, well, Deana, it's all about the air. And he said, I take in a big breath, and I push from the diaphragm. And he says, and I can tell even before a note comes out if I'm going to be on pitch or not. And I looked at him and I said, really? Does my dad do that? He looked at me, he said, no, your father has no idea what he's doing. He just does it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another encounter with some groovy moments from the past. You're listening to The Encore Show with Dick Scopatoni, whose pop group Harper's Bazaar had a hit record back in the day called Feelin' Groovy. Dick talks with guests from all the years that not only shaped our generation, but just happened to include the most magnificent music ever made, and the politics, protests, and everything else that played out during these unforgettable days of our lives. So, Dick, what's on today's show?
Thanks, Ralph. Deana Martin is a world-class entertainer who's equally comfortable singing with a celebrated symphony or on an intimate cabaret stage with a swinging jazz quintet. And I have to add, she's recorded her most recent album at Capitol Records Studio A, which is famous in its own right. She's a New York Times best-selling author, a gifted actor, a vocalist of incredible depth and passion, and a licensed pilot. But when talent is part of the family pedigree, it can sometimes be difficult for the child of a famous singer and actor to forge their own individual path. Deana Martin has successfully navigated that tricky terrain, and we'll be talking with her in just a moment.
I give to you,
and you give to me true love, true love. So on and on,
it will always be true love. True love for you and I have a guardian angel
on high with nothing to do but to give to you and to give.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris Allegri. Take a moment to visit our website, theencoreshow.com, where you'll find all of our podcasts archived for your listening pleasure. But just as important, you've got to check out our shopping page. There's bargains on items from both today and yesteryear. Of course, there's plenty of memorabilia like autographed photos and gold records, but there's also fashion items, concert tickets, backyard party novelties, and a ton of fun things. So once again, visit our website, theencoreshow.com.
Deana Martin's latest album is called Swing Street, and it's a collection of songs which capture the essence of someone who is equally at ease performing Hoagy Carmichael's Georgia on My Mind or singing Billy Joel's New York State of Mind. It's a knockout of an album which, as I mentioned earlier, she recorded in one of Hollywood's most famous rooms, Capitol Records Studio A, the legendary home of Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, Barbara Streisand, and, of course, Deana's father, Dean Martin. Today, I think we'll get a chance to talk about her best-selling book, Memories Are Made of This, Dean Martin Through His Daughter's Eyes, which may soon hit the big screen, directed by Joe Mantegna. She has been determined to step out from her famous father's shadow and launch her own career, which thus far has encompassed a wealth of stage experience, including roles in Romeo and Juliet, Yet and The Taming of the Shrew. She's working in clubs and concert venues all over the country. I think Branson is a real hot spot for her, and we'll find out where she's going to be performing next. Her book title, Memories Are Made of This, is also the song title of her father's very first #1 hit. Well, she was in the studio when he recorded it. Lots of memories going on here. So, Deana, welcome to the Encore Show.
Well, thank you, and what a beautiful introduction.
I have people tell me, well, I do these, they're kind of luxurious introductions, I guess, I don't know, but every time I do one, I have people say, are you sure that's me you're talking about?
That's great. Well, now I feel better about myself.
Well, good. Okay, great. And I have the good fortune of, interviewing some pretty neat people, and you're definitely one of them. I thought we would start the ball rolling today by going back before your professional career started. And if you want, you can talk about when you were a kid or whatever you want to talk about, but let's go back before you actually got into the biz, as it were. Can you talk about your growing up years?
Oh, I certainly can. And it is all, of course, in my book, Memories Are Made of This, Dean Martin Through His Daughter's Eyes. But I was lucky enough to have parents who, well, first of all, all of the Martins are hams, so to speak.
Okay.
And I was always very musical and, wanting to do little, plays and everything. But I remember, and in fact, all of a sudden I'm just remembering this one time when all of us, all of the kids, there were 7 of us, and we went over to Judy Garland's house, and Eliza was there, and Lorna, and little Joey, and we put on a play. Now, I was only like 3 years old, just tiny.
Yeah.
And after we put on the play, Judy Garland leaned down to me. She came down. She said, "Deana, you were the best tree I've ever seen."
Oh, okay, all right.
So she was my first critic.
Okay,
but it was a fantastic time. But for me, I was given ballet lessons, tap lessons, piano lessons, and so that was something that I just loved. I loved singing and dancing and acting. So from a very, very young age. But to tell you the truth, the first moment, I think it was 9 years old, when I thought that's what I want to do. I want to be in show business. I went to the Sands Hotel as a family. We went to the Sands Hotel to see my dad's show in the Copa Room.
Oh, yeah.
And we sat down there, ringside, and stage was dark, and then you hear the announcer say, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Sands Hotel is proud to present the star of our show, direct from the bar, Dean Martin." And then the audience, they went, "Oh, there he is," and he walked out looking so handsome in his, the black tuxedo with the red pockets square,
sure.
And he sang, and he was funny, and he was charming, and everybody was just mesmerized, and it was magical to me.
Yeah.
And I said at that time, that's what I want to do. So I knew when I was that young. And then it wasn't long after that I went to, as you mentioned, to Capitol Records with my mom, walking down the hall into Studio A and seeing the photographs that line the walls, and it's Peggy Lee, Judy Garland, Nat King Cole, Bobby Darin, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
So and I'm watching, and I was 9 or 10, and walking down that hallway and sitting on a cold little chair. There was a 42-piece orchestra. My dad was up on his little podium. People were laughing, and he had backup singers, 3 backup singers, the Easy Riders, and I watched him. As you said, I watched him record his very first #1 hit. I said, "Oh, yes, I've got to do this." And this album, Swing Street, we recorded it all there in that same room, Studio A at Capitol Records.
Yeah, and with a lot of really hot musicians, I understand.
Oh, my gosh, the best musicians ever, and Patrick Williams conducting and writing the arrangements, and 5 of the songs are his, but it was an unbelievable experience. But we can get back to that. But growing up in having your dad is Dean Martin and Uncle Frank Sinatra and Uncle Sammy Davis Jr. And the people that would come to the house, it was amazing. I was able to learn from the very best. And when I was very young, I remember we would have fabulous Christmas Eve parties, and maybe Rosemary Clooney would come over, and we'd sit down and sing "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," and everybody was.
It's like right out of the movies.
It was absolutely out of the movie, and it was. It's funny, I hadn't even thought about that, but it was absolutely like out of the movies.
Well, as you are mentioning all these names, it's actually kind of amazing to hear you talk about this, because it's literally a who's who of showbiz from that time frame. But your exposure to them, as the daughter of Dean, it sounds like it was pretty common and normal for you. Anyone else hearing it, as they hear these names hit the tape here, it sounds pretty amazing. And what's interesting, what turned you on when you were 9, you said, "I've got to do that," reminds me the very first concert I ever went to. I'm going to say I was probably 16. I was in high school. And we lived near Santa Cruz, and I've lived near Santa Cruz all my life. Anyway, we went to the San Jose Civic Auditorium to see the Kingston Trio, which was a favorite group of mine, and I'd never been to a concert. These guys came out on stage, and I would have to say within about 5 minutes, I was telling myself, dyed in the wool, I am going to do this. And from that moment on, that was the turn on, and eventually I did get into music myself. We were talking about some of the famous names. What do you consider to be some of your most notable successes throughout your life? I want to get back to the famous names, but first I want to find out what you think is some of your high points.
Oh gosh, going to college, Dartington College of Arts in England. So it was in a big old, and I learned how to say castle, So
yeah.
And so doing the plays in a castle was quite something, and those were in the days when, let's see, it was the Rolling Stones and the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
And so those were the people when I was growing up, and they were over there. They were in England, and it was an exciting time for me. So learning the craft of acting, on stage and projecting. So that was one thing. Then coming back to the States and being able to record some songs. I tell you, my first songs that I recorded with Lee Hazelwood.
Oh yeah.
It was exceptional for me. It was extraordinary because it was country.
Yeah.
It was Girl of the Month Club, and When He Remembers Me, and I remember going to Nashville and doing Music City, USA, because there was something about. I liked folk music and rock and roll and country, and there was just something. I loved Joan Baez and Bob Dylan.
Oh yeah.
And it was coming back and being able to record at such a young age with Lee Hazelwood.
Lee Hazelwood. Now maybe I'm tying the two together wrong. Wasn't he involved in These Boots Are Made for Walking with Nancy, or
yes.
was it another Lee?
No, that's him.
Okay.
That was Lee Hazelwood.
Yeah.
And and he was amazing, and he was fun. He's the one who wrote Houston. Going back
really?
To Houston.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
When he recorded my dad, he also recorded my my brother Dino, Desi, and
yes.
Billy
Okay.
with their hits.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was a very early success for me. And then going on to do plays. One of my favorite all-time. Oh my gosh, it was hysterical. I was starring in Star Spangled Girl with George Hamilton and Jimmy Boyd, and it was the first time we did the National Touring Company, and it was the first time George Hamilton was on stage. He had never done a play before.
Huh.
Now, Neil Simon's brother, Danny Simon, was the director, and we're doing the play, and I think we opened it at the Schubert Theater in, Flint, Michigan, or Salem, or something like that.
Yeah.
And George really didn't know. He was nervous because when you're doing movies, all you have to do is learn your lines for that scene.
Right.
So when you're doing a play, you have to know the whole play.
Sure.
And poor thing, he went up on his lines, and we all covered for him. But he was a trooper. He was great, and we had so much fun doing that play. And there we are. We took over for Richard Benjamin, Anthony Perkins, and it was Connie Stevens.
Okay.
So we were the National Touring Company. For me, that was one of my biggest successes because it was me on the road at a young age with George Hamilton and Jimmy Boyd. You remember him? I saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus.
Sure. Yes, of course.
And
yeah.
he had the TV series. So just to be out there, I think I was 22 years old, 21, to be working these Schubert theaters, which was a dream come true for me.
Sure. Schubert,
Yeah.
and of course in New York, Schubert's
Yes,
probably
exactly.
the most famous one
That's right.
on Broadway. You mentioned, let me jump back to, did you say Dartington? You went to school at Dartington?
Yes, Dartington College of Arts in South Devon.
How did you get turned on to that?
Well, it was funny. I had known about, to tell you the truth, at the time I was thinking, gee, I'm going to apply to a couple of colleges that I probably can't get into.
Yeah, okay.
And then I'd say, I probably, and then I could just stay here and act. And then, of course, it was very funny because I was accepted. I had to do a few things, and I thought, you know what, this was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to England where it's all happening, because this was the 60s, of course, 66, 67.
Yeah, British
66.
invasion, absolutely.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. And, so meeting all of the people, but being there in South Devon, in Totnes, and there was a pub on the campus, and there was High Street and Low Street, but we did everything, modern dance, and there were, artists there, and I was really learning the craft. And, of course, I came back with an English accent, which really killed my dad. I'd go, Father, I'm going to take a bath now. And he looked at me,
Yeah.
because he was so down to earth and,
Yeah.
fabulous. So it was funny, but it was almost like a mistake for me to go there, but it was the best education I could have had.
That's really neat. Particularly, you were there really at the peak of the whole music scene in Great Britain. That's neat.
It was very neat, and then and coming back and doing more plays, and then a few movies, and then getting married. Another one of my big accomplishments is getting married and having a beautiful son.
Yeah.
Yes, and now 3 grandchildren.
Okay. Oh, that's terrific.
So you talk about a big success. There you go. Some of my accomplishments, for sure.
Now, are the grandchildren nearby, or do you get to connect fairly regularly, or how's that whole scene
Not
work
as
out?
often as we would like, because they're all in they're in Burbank, California.
Yeah.
Our son is there. He works with a company for distribution of movies and TV shows, and
Okay.
so that's what he does. But they're right there in Burbank, so whenever we're there, we get to see them. But our oldest grandson goes to Seton Hall in New Jersey.
Okay, I'm hearing a song trying to squeeze in here. Let's shift gears, take a quick break, and listen to the music.
Of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know,
where the treetops glisten and children listen
to hear
sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a life.
You going to be in Northern California any time this year? San Francisco or anything going on there?
Well, I think John was talking. Let's see, who was he talking to? Because we love to do it, Michael Feinstein's and what was the Performing Arts Center? I was there, but I know that John is working that out, because I can't go a year or two without going to San Francisco, and I mean Northern California. So it's so we will be doing something, and I will give you a call personally and let you know.
Great.
Because the shows are fantastic. I wish you had been able to come to the shows in Las Vegas at the South Point Casino. We had the big Dean Martin 100 birthday bash, and I had the Gold Diggers from the Dean Martin show.
No! Oh,
yes,
gee.
the original Gold Diggers, 8 of them, came out. They're all beautiful, and they sang "You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You" with me. And
yeah.
Yeah, and they did one of their numbers, but that was a spectacular show.
I'm trying to think. South Point Casino, is that the newer one that it's the farther end of the strip going the other way?
South Point, well, this is where they do big rodeos there, too. I mean, it's all self-contained. This is where Jerry Lewis did all the MDA telethons.
Oh, okay.
And so
okay.
The South Point. Do you know where the bootlegger is? Or
no, it's not ringing a bell.
Well, it's south, but it's a huge complex. And as I say, they have, rodeos downstairs, and there's, bowling alleys and all. I mean, it's a huge complex with probably 3 of the finest restaurants in Las Vegas. But it's a wonderful showroom that reminds me very much of the Copa Room at the Sands Hotel.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. So,
that's neat. Last time we were in Las Vegas, I'm trying to think, we were fairly near the airport, but looking south on the Strip, the biggest building was, I think, the one you're talking about. It was a distance away, at least a mile away.
Yes, it is, and it's huge, and the people there are fabulous, and it was great.
Yeah.
So that was wonderful. I'm sorry you missed those shows. And then on the Monday after that, I did the first Deana Martin Celebrity Roast.
Really?
Right there at the South Point.
Oh.
Rich Little was one of the guys, and Tony LoBianco, and Robert Davi, and got Robin Leach. So we roasted Dennis Bono, who has a radio show there, and for his 70th birthday. But
did they tape that?
No, they weren't allowed to tape that because there were some rights that they had to take care of. But it was spectacular, and the owner of the South Point Casino came and he said, "Deana, we have to do this, like every month.
Yeah.
We have to have the Deana Martin Celebrity Roast because it was sold out, but the people, it was hysterical, it was fabulous, and it brought back so many memories for everybody, of course."
Oh, sure. I never even thought of that, and of course, how many renditions have I seen of the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast? But it never occurred to me that's a perfect entree. Do you think that's something you might follow up on, where maybe at some point we might see it on TV?
Yes. In fact, everybody came up to me after the show. Many people were interested in doing that, and of course, people wanted me to roast them, and it was great. So I think the next person we are roasting is Joe Mantegna.
Okay.
And Joe said that Andy Garcia wants to roast him, and so it keeps going on. Bob Newhart wants to be roasted, and so all the people that want to roast them. First of all, there's a lot of celebrities and comedians who live in Vegas.
Okay.
So they would. So it's almost just like it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And the South Point did a beautiful job of setting it up. It looked exactly like the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast, and they had the big. It was fabulous. So we will be. We are definitely talking about that.
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, I think, because what's interesting about that is it's today. It is a follow-up of what your father had done, and everyone remembers those. But it's today. It's now.
Yeah.
And it's you now. I think it's just a great idea.
It's current. It was fabulous, and Clint Holmes is a great singer. He got up and he roasted, and Clint's wife Kelly is amazing. She was Ruth Buzzy. She did the whole thing with the net and the purse. Oh, she's fabulous, and she's great entertainers there, and so it was fabulous. So I'm looking forward to that. Trying to find the time between doing shows, traveling around. We also have a documentary that's coming out about for Dad for his 100th. And I'm very fortunate to know that we have already we were able to interview Florence Henderson.
Really?
And then we just did Angie Dickinson and George Slaughter and Bob Newhart and Tommy Tune and Lee Hale, who was the musical director on the Dean Martin show, Regis Philbin. Regis did it, and so we've got lots of people still interested, and it's been tough trying to do all the shows and get everything done. But I love what I'm doing, and
and you are. It sounds like maybe as things ebb and go, there are some things that are all converging almost at the same time.
Right.
If you mentioned to me about the celebrity roast, my light bulb instantly goes on and says, geez, you ought to start doing that. Well, there's all kinds of things that appear as though doing your dad's 100th, that's another, it's all happening at once, basically.
It's all happening at once.
Yeah.
And so doing the Deana Sings Dino, shows and the 100th and the documentary and, and the album, the Swing Street is my favorite album so far.
Mm-hmm.
And to be with those fabulous musicians and then, trying to work on the movie and the shows. So thank God I have my handsome husband John.
Yeah.
We are 24/7 on the road.
Yeah.
And he gets it all together, and I don't know how he does it.
Well, that's great that you're both working together. My wife Mimi helps me with my show too, and I think that's kind of neat. You mentioned the name Dino, and my oldest son's name was Dino, and I have to tell you a story. This had to be probably 8 or 9 years ago. We got talking. I have an uncle, Dino, and my son, Dino, assumed that he was named after my uncle, Dino. I said, no, you were named after Dean Martin. He couldn't believe it. It just totally blew him away. This was at age, what was he, age 37 or age 38 was the first time he found out that I named him after your dad.
That's funny.
Yeah. So
that is funny. Never occurred to him, huh?
No, never. Well, it's because I had an Uncle Dino, so that was, and
right.
Everyone was Italian back in those days. So
that's right. That's so funny.
Have any of the well-known people you've not only worked with, but even just been around, left a really memorable impression on you?
Well, I have to say that Frank Sinatra, Uncle Frank.
Yeah.
He's the one, he sat down with me. He was concerned. I remember we were going to sing a song on the Dean Martin show, and I'm standing in the wings with him. And I looked up, I said, so, Uncle Frank, how do you do it? How do you get that great tone? How do you sing? And he got very technical. He says, well, Deana, it's all about the air. And he said, I take in a big breath, and I push from the diaphragm. And he says, and I can tell even before a note comes out if I'm going to be on pitch or not. And I looked at him and I said, really? Does my dad do that? He looked at me, he said, no, your father has no idea what he's doing. He just does it. So, my dad had that gorgeous voice.
Yeah.
Uncle Frank worked for every note, and he taught me about phrasing and about sitting down and maybe not singing this, not trying to sing the song the same way every time. He said, and as you sing songs, as you go through your life, the meaning of it, it will change for you, and you'll sing it differently. So he taught me about that and phrasing.
Yeah.
Whereas what my dad taught me was, I remember asking my dad, I said, can I have voice lessons? And he said, why? You want to sound like everybody else in the choir?
Yeah. What has been your most challenging experience, either in or out of showbiz?
Ooh. Okay. Out of showbiz, my most challenging was becoming a pilot.
Okay. A pilot. All right.
A pilot.
Yeah.
And it was funny because, my brother Dean Paul was a fantastic pilot, Captain Dean Paul Martin.
Oh, yes.
And when I was young, and we would fly to Palm Springs and then back, and it was that darn Banning Pass, that was really, really tough. But I had I really wanted to fly, and Dino was I used to call him Dino, of course, and he was an exceptional pilot, and he loved everything about flying, and that's what got me excited about it. Then when I met my husband, handsome husband John, he was a pilot. He started flying when he was like 15 years old, and he said it cost him $9 to have flights, and and the plane. And he said, Deana, I would love for us to be able to fly places and go out and, go someplace for the weekend. And I said, well, that would be great. I would love to do that. And he said, but I would like for you to be able to land the plane if something happens to me.
Okay.
And I thought, well, that's a good idea. And then, of course, they don't teach you just how to land a plane.
No.
So I had to learn the whole thing, and that was a challenge. And it was, it was very frightening and scary, and I did it while I was writing the book. Memories Are Made of This. So those were two challenges right at the same time. So this is 2004, I think I finished it. But it was getting up. First of all, there's so much to learn about flying a plane. And I remember the first day going out on my first lesson, and Joe Justice at Justice Aviation in Santa Monica said, okay, now you're going to walk around, you're going to check the plane. You're going to check to see if this is all right. And I went, wait a minute. I'm going to check the plane that I'm going to fly.
Yeah. Hopefully somebody else has checked it too. Yeah.
Yeah. He says, no. He says, and then you check this and that. And I'm going, oh, my gosh. I'm going to be the one to check it. And I took the lessons, and I know when I was doing my very first cross-country solo, I was scared to death, of course, but I know my brother, Dean Paul, was up there helping me along, because there are 2 times I had to turn around and come back because I'm VFR. I'm not instrument rated.
Okay.
And so when the clouds start coming in, you have to turn around and go back.
All right, so everything's visual at that point.
Everything was visual, right, exactly.
Okay.
So I had to go back and land, and then, so 3 times. So on that 3rd time, I did it, and it was spectacular, but I know he was helping me, and made a safe landing, and turned around and came back, and so I've been flying ever since. So that was very, very challenging. Writing the book was very challenging.
Oh, I'm sure. How long did it take before you actually had the editor say, yeah, it's a go on this thing? Did you spend more than a year on it?
Well, I spent 50 years on it. No,
yeah, right.
No, what I'm saying is when I had the idea and the stories, and I spoke to Alan Nevins, who was the agent, he said, just talk to the people. And it was Macmillan in London. I was talking to I was on the phone, and I told them the stories. And they said, okay, you've got a deal.
Okay.
And then that's when I sat down and started writing at my dining room table with a legal yellow pad and writing. And then I took, I had my tape recorder, and I would go interview people, and I would go everywhere. Everybody had their own little book. I'd go see Patty Lewis and interview her, and she would tell me stories, and then I would talk to the people and interview them, and I had my recorder on, and one story would lead to another story.
Oh, I'll
and
bet.
One story would lead to another story. And it's good that I had a deadline, because I'd still be writing, because you remember things, and then that story. And it was tough. It was a challenge because growing up, my parents were divorced when I was 1.
Okay.
And so then living with my mom for those first few years, and then going to live with Dad, my stepmom Jeannie, who was my mom, who raised me. And so going through that, it was pretty tough. And then now we're living in the big beautiful house in Beverly Hills with Dad and all my brothers and sisters and all the people coming by. So it was an exceptional, interesting life. And what I know is that everybody goes through these things in their life. I was very lucky to have Dean Martin as my dad and Betty Martin as my mom.
What's interesting is that as you're saying that, I believe you're right when you say everybody goes through this. They don't go through it with the kind of names that you did, but nonetheless, the ups and downs are all there, which gets me to thinking as I get older. I think more about my philosophy of life, which is a pretty big question now, but wasn't even in my thinking back in my 20s. Would you be up for sharing some of the wisdom, including spiritual wisdom, that you've gained over the years? I know you're talking about your brother Dino, and I'm sure that had a major impact on you, as did any number of other things.
Hey, do you feel a song coming on? I do. Let's take a break. Just enough time for a quick cappuccino, and we'll return shortly.
Time after time, I tell myself that I'm so lucky to be loving you.
So lucky to be the one you run to see in the evening when the day is through. I only know The passing years will
The passing years will show
you've kept my love so young, so new, and time after time
you'll hear me say that I'm
so lucky to be loving you.
Yes, it did. Well, all of these things are your life experiences, but I think the most important thing was that my parents were down to earth, and they taught us manners. Manners. It's yes, please, no, thank you, and be home on time. This is what you have to do. There are rules. Follow the rules. I remember my dad saying, please, go out and become a star, whatever you want to do, sing, but please don't embarrass me.
Okay,
and
all right.
It's the way that we were brought up, and the rules, and there was no swearing at our house growing up. That wasn't right. I know people were doing it outside, but not in our house.
Yeah.
You would never hear that from anybody. So you had to respect people. You had to respect the rules. You're home on time for dinner. You're going to clean up your room, make your bed, and you have to earn your own allowance. And I remember, and one of the fabulous things my dad said to me one time, and it's helped me through my life. I said, could I have my allowance? Could I have $10? Because I wanted double my allowance for some reason. He looked at me, and I don't know what it was. I had to buy something. And he looked at me, he said, now, Deana, I want you to remember this always. He said, for me to give you $10, I have to make $100. And I thought, wow. So he knew money, and he wanted me to know the value of money. And so I'm going, wow, he has to make $100. He said, if I was to give you $1,000, how much will I have to make?
Okay,
no,
here we
not
go.
Now. So it was down to earth. It was kind and sweet, but we had to work for that. And those are the things he instilled in us. So it was do your work, get in, get out, and enjoy your life. Do what you want to do. It's not that he wanted us going into show business. My dad would get up every morning very early, have breakfast, and if he wasn't going to work, if he didn't have to go to the movie, record or whatever it is, he'd go play golf.
Oh, yeah.
With his friends, and he'd play little cards after. He was home every night for dinner. So all of us would have dinner together, and then we'd watch, a movie or something, and then he'd go to sleep, and he'd get up, and if he had to learn his lines, he was up there doing that. Everything was organized, and I think that was the best example that he taught all of us. And so that's something that I keep. I love to get up early in the morning, exercise, go out and do my work, come back and have a nice life. So it's
well, and I think it's really instructive just talking about that. It's real easy for all of us who we look at Hollywood stars and people that are famous. We make certain assumptions, which really oftentimes are baseless. We don't know for sure what's going on. But the way you're describing it, it sounds like a normal family life would be one way to describe it, which I think is kind of neat. It's not a show busy, skating around the world, I'll see you in a month and a half kind of thing.
No, it wasn't like that at all. And of course, it was church on Sunday. Absolutely. My dad had his rosary next to the bed. Church on Sunday, and say your prayers at night. And none of us, all of the kids, all of my dad's kids, were smart and funny and respectful. Of course, is what I'm going to say. And we would never think to do anything. I know this sounds weird. We didn't want to disappoint our dad.
Yeah.
So we did what we were supposed to do. We played in all of our sports. We went to our classes. We came home. We did our homework. And it's like I really don't understand today kids or families that let their kids do the things that they do. I know there's some kids who just really need a lot of help. But I think if you talk to your kids, you have meals with them, and the best that you can. Teach them good morals, and and also set a good example for them. That's...
Well, yeah, and that feels comfortable. It's the best word I can think of. Maybe comfortable has to do with I was raised the same way, too, like you're describing. It all made sense to me at the time. I look back on it now. It still makes sense to me. So,
yeah.
But let's jump to my last question here, because I really want to find out about this. And I know that one of the areas that you've dealt with is, being the daughter of a famous person, then you're establishing yourself all the time. What's going on now? What are you doing now? What are your plans for the future? I've looked at your website, DeanaMartin.com, and looks like you're going to be in Washington, D.C., maybe in another week or so?
Yes, that's for NIAF, for the National Italian American Foundation, of course, and I'll be singing somewhere. And I love going to D.C. I love doing shows for the veterans. That's very important for me, and I do a few of those a year. And so we have a Broadway play, hopefully that is coming out, putting the movie, getting the movie going. The documentary, of course, still has to come. An album will be coming out next year, Deana Sings Dino, so it'll be... Yeah, very, very cool. And so it's shows. In fact, do you ever get to Palm Beach?
Not often. No.
Not often?
No.
I'll be doing a Valentine's Day at the Colony. The Colony is a fabulous place to play, and so on Valentine's Day for a week.
Okay.
My husband and I met on a blind date on Valentine's Day.
Really? Okay.
Yes, and we were married a year later.
Yeah.
And that's like 28 years ago. So.
All right, you're at 28. We're at 32. Okay, so yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're right there together, Dick.
Yeah.
And so if people keep looking at the at the website and click on tours and events, we'll be putting more of the events up. I don't put the private things up because sometimes people used to show up and and so at corporate events they weren't happy. But I'm doing lots of great shows and running around. But look out for the documentary and the movie and the shows and the Deana Martin Celebrity Roasts.
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that one. It sure feels to me like there's a whole new life possibly emerging there. I don't know.
Yes, there is. I just think that big logo of, Man of the Hour, and I guess now it has to be, probably can't say Man of the Hour anymore. It's probably going to have to be Person of the Hour.
Right, yeah. Or another word for person, something else. I'm curious, did you ever try or take any classes on learning Italian?
Yes, I still do.
I knew you did, yes.
Oh,
really?
Yes.
Are you still at it?
I am still at it, and in fact, via banda Bartolini di Genove Parioli.
My response to you is una tavola per due per piacere. That's right out of Berlitz, and it means a table for two, please. That's as far as I ever made it with Italian. I took 2 Italian classes, but I didn't retain it. So, but who do you use the language with?
Well, I had the Rosetta Stone. I love that, and I'm just going to get Babbel.
Okay.
But I tell you, in fact, Vince Ferragamo, the quarterback, the Hall of Famer, he's a very dear friend of ours. And he, last year, learned Italian, because he has a vineyard, he has Ferragamo wines.
Ah.
And, of course, he's back and forth from Italy. But he learned, and he just went to a class at the local, school. He's out there in Orange, California. And he learned, and he's amazing now. So I know it can be done. You can learn after a certain age.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. And if I had more, unfortunately, I don't have much reason to use it, but if I had more reason to, one of the classes I took prior to a trip that we went to Italy, and I used part of it on the trip, but then after I came home, you lose it if you don't use it. So what I'm going to be looking for, and I would like to get back to you maybe, let's say, like in 4 or 5 months or so. I want to find out what's happening with the movie at that point, and maybe the documentary will have come out at that point. Also, I got to pick up a copy of your book because it sounds like you interviewed so many.
Oh my gosh, I did, and Jerry Lewis, and and he wrote the foreword. But I will, if you will email me your address. I will send you I'll send you the book.
Oh, great.
Okay?
Great.
All right, because you'll love it. You won't put it down.
Yeah, good. And, Martin and Lewis, of course, again, you're younger than me, but not too much younger than me, but I remember sitting in the theater, 25 cents to get in, went to see every Martin and Lewis movie, and so a lot of memories for me here, too, just in talking to you, so...
Well, it's on, let me see, November 27th, I'm going to be speaking at the Friars Club in New York, because we're doing this, a salute to Jerry Lewis.
Okay.
Because he was the abbot of, the Friars Club.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're going to need a new abbot, but we did a celebration of Jerry Lewis at the South Point Casino on Labor Day, because that's where he did his last shows, and that's the theater that I go to. But we are going to have a fabulous night honoring Jerry Lewis, and some people are going to sing, and I'm going to talk. I'm going to roast him.
Okay.
Because that's my favorite thing to do, is to roast Jerry Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And so then make people laugh and, bring back all the memories of unbelievable genius and the things that he did. So it will be a nice evening, and I'm looking forward to that. And so that's just around the corner, November 27th. But Jerry Lewis was an unbelievable talent.
I have to, of course, just obviously say thank you. But beyond saying thank you, it's really important. When I talk to you, I'm reconnecting with so many points in my past. And I'm sure most people, if not all people you talk to, they plug into all kinds of things that they remember. And you were privy to all of them. So it's been a real pleasure. I'm glad I called Rosario.
I'm glad you did too, and and she's an amazing human being. She's fantastic, and she said this is one that you should definitely do.
Okay, good.
All right, and we never even touched on Elvis Presley or any, we will have another. We'll have another time.
Yeah, enjoy all of the rest of the touring for this year, and we shall talk again soon.
All right, that's great. So send me an email with your address where I should send this book, and we'll talk soon.
Good. Thanks,
all
Deana.
Right. All right, my pleasure.
Okay, take care. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today for this wonderful interview with Deana Martin. It's one of the most fun interviews I've done, especially since there was so many memories of her time with her dad. I'm looking forward to talking with her again. I want to remind you to check out our website, theencoreshow.com. Until next week and more memories. Keep on keeping on. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Encore Show with Dick Scopatoni. Join us again next week for more memories from the good old days. In the words of Jerry Garcia, what a long, strange trip it was. So if you're ready to take another trip with us down memory lane next week, well, be there or be, you know the word. I'm Ralph Cole. See you then.